am so thrilled to welcome onto the stage a woman who, I talked to Jasmine about coming to WOA in about August. And I was so just mesmerized by what she was creating at that point. And then ever since she said yes, everywhere I turn around, I see Jasmine Crowe everywhere. And it has made me more excited each and every time. A little bit about Jasmine. She is the founder of Goodr, a technology platform that has been founded to help waste less food and help less people go hungry. So feeding more. And she has generated so much momentum with this initiative, and it's gaining a lot of notoriety, and that's really exciting to see her getting all of that praise. Recently, a 40 under 40 for Atlanta Business Chronicle. She's taking the TED Women stage in 3 weeks, featured in Oprah, featured in Forbes, and she is going to tell us all about her journey. So come on down, Jasmine. Let's make sure your mic is on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Look close. It looks really great.
Jasmine, so for anyone who isn't familiar with the inspiration behind Goodr, tell us a little bit about that story.
Definitely. Well, first, I just want to say you guys look so great dancing. I walked out, took a call, and I came back in, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a great event. Yeah,
we had a lot of fun.
It looked great. So it really started truly organically in my kitchen. I moved to Atlanta in 2013. My sister had just started at Spelman College. We were living in Phoenix, Arizona. And my dad was like, go with her. It's a big city. I don't want her to get lost in Atlanta. He just thought it was this big, big city. And I thought, well, you know what? I do love Atlanta. I was trying to become an entrepreneur. And I thought, sure, I'll just go there. I had nothing to lose, So I drove from Phoenix to Atlanta. And in 2013, one time I was just driving through downtown, and this used to be downtown Atlanta where the Peachtree and Pine Shelter used to sit, and I saw hundreds of people that were homeless. And so I'm like, wow. And I had seen homelessness before. Definitely, I've traveled LA, DC, but I think in a city I lived in to see that many just concentrated, I can't speak to what made me kind of feel compelled, but I just started cooking for people that were living on the streets. And I posted it on Facebook, and I would say about 20 people came out the very first time I fed, which was about 6 years ago last month. And I started feeding every week, and I was couponing, and I was price matching, and I was getting some donations from food banks, and then I would be cooking all this food in my kitchen. And so a video from one of my pop-up restaurants, and it would look very much like the tables we're at right now. I'd rent tables and linens, and my goal was to try and allow people to dine with dignity. And it was nothing against like hashtag lunch bags or just certain ways that we were serving. Sure. It was just, could we look at to solve hunger? I think how we would want it solved if it was us that was experiencing it. And I thought like, well, I don't eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day, and I'm not a sandwich person. And just, if you're homeless, how degrading must that feel? Just every day you get a sandwich or you get something in a bag, and you want to be grateful, but you would like something else, or you'd like at least the choice to get something else. And so when I started printing out these menus and letting people have like this 5-course meal, it was life-changing for them. And I remember meeting so many grown men that would just be crying and saying like, no one ever treated me like this. And they would just love it. And I remember one time I got upgraded to first class, and they brought around these hot towels for us to like wipe our hands. And then I said, we got to do that for them. And we started like taking these washcloths and like soaking them in hot water. And just to see them washing their faces and their hands. And this video goes viral from one of my restaurants underneath the bridge by Grady Hospital on Facebook. And I woke up one morning to like millions and millions of views and all these friend requests. And people were like, this is so amazing. Which restaurants are donating the food? And I was like, nobody, right? I was, as I mentioned, couponing and I'm price matching. I always say I'm the reason Walmart doesn't price match anymore. Because they used to do it and then they quit. Like one time I went in there and the lady was like, this is ending next month. And I was like, oh gosh. So I felt like it was always always my fault. But that was more of an aha moment. And they come in weird places, right? So I think that was the idea. It was like, well, why don't businesses donate the food? And so I started researching food waste, and I was just blown away. I mean, like, we waste so much food in this country when people go hungry. And I thought at that time, because Uber Eats and Postmates were starting to penetrate the Atlanta market, and friends were sending me codes like, get $10 off your first order. And I thought, wow, we have created all these apps to get food to people like me and you, right? Who've never had a problem going to get food, and it makes it easier for us sometimes, right? But there was nothing that we were using technology for to get food to the people that I was trying to feed, right? And so I thought, well, I could maybe create an app that could go to these businesses and get this food and then get it to people in need. And I spent the later part of 2016 trying to make that happen. And I would meet with people and they would say, oh, that's not going to work. And I wasn't technical. You know, I had never built an app, and it just was really an idea. So I started to take that in, like, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. Just, let that go. But I think the true defining moment, which I always say is like the day that I saw the light, is when I found out that one of my friends was experiencing hunger. And I thought, wow, like it just blew my mind. Her and her husband had just moved to Atlanta from New York, and she was a creative artist, and she was touring with like Paula Abdul and Alicia Keys and Zendaya. I mean, I was mesmerized by this like glamorous life that she was living, and she had married her husband on a beach in Cancun. I mean, it just was crazy. And she thinks, well, surely I'll move to Atlanta. They got all these movie and TV sets, and I'll pick right back up. And what happened is, when she got here, it became less about her artistry, but more about like how many Instagram followers she had. And people would say things like, well, do my makeup for an Instagram shout out. And she had a son and a family, and it just was, she wasn't able to get picked back up. And so I'm visiting her home, and she was like, do you want something to drink? And when she opened her refrigerator, I just remember it being so empty, and it was shocking. And I think so often we don't know what our faces look like when we're having conversations with our friends or our family members. Until this day, I don't know what my face looked like. But she turned around and she looks at me, and she's pregnant now with her second child, and she just burst into tears. And she's like, Jasmine, I know what you're thinking. I'm trying to keep, apple juice and goldfish in the house. And she's just breaking down. And she was pregnant too. So, I mean, it was like a breakdown. And I was like, I just kept feeling so bad. Like, what did I do? But then also, what did I do that someone that would be in a close proximity to me could be struggling with hunger, and knowing that I'm feeding people every weekend, yet never tell me that they were experiencing hunger in their household. And I think at that moment, my commitment to the fight really shifted, because while I had done some really great work with senior citizens and on the streets with people that were homeless, it never dawned on me that people close to me could be experiencing hunger. And so at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm really going to build this app. And I just never looked back after that, and just have kept on going, and kept her story always in the back of my mind. And she's doing great now. She's working at Tyler Perry Studios, and she's on a lot of movie sets. And I mean, her and her husband just bought another house, and they have two beautiful kids. But I say all that to say, sometimes you can have a moment of struggle, and you can lose everything. And one of those things can be food for your family and your unborn child. And no one should ever have to have that happen in a country where we waste as much food as we do.
I heard you tell that story on your TEDx talk, and it moved me for so many reasons. And one is how much that moment, which had to be such a hard moment for her, just to let you see into the refrigerator, how much good has come from that scary moment. But also too, just the vulnerability for you both to talk honestly about, because a lot of people won't even let you know that that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that I always question myself. I always was like, did I seem as though I wasn't someone she could talk to? Did I seem as though, I was judgmental? Because that just wasn't who I was. But really what it is, it's a shameful thing.
Absolutely.
No one wants to be known as the hungry friend or the struggling friend. And I think it's, in this day and age with social media and everybody's posting their good thing. I take social media breaks all the time. I posted that the other day, like, I just want to be by myself. Like, I just want to be able to just work and focus. There was even probably heightened shame just in this day and age than what I felt like it could have been maybe even 5-10 years ago. And so it was extremely vulnerable, but I think that moment brought us closer because one, I had to go to her when Goodr was being birthed. And actually when I was writing that TED Talk, and I had to say to her, like, listen, I've got to tell this story. Like, it's the part of, it's, if people ask me why I do this, this is the reason. You are the reason. And it's great. And anytime, when we were in Oprah magazine and all this stuff, like now she's my makeup artist. And so I always take her with me. I always make sure that she's paid for her work and just edified because her story really inspired me to do the work that I do. And so that moment of vulnerability really, I think, brought us closer and brought us to great opportunities. And I've been able to take her along the ride with me. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of.
So on the business side of things, you said that you were already feeling entrepreneurial. That was calling you. But when you realized that this solution had to come via the technical app, and that is not your forte, what do the first steps even look like in that scenario? And where was the first place that you started to get momentum with the app idea?
Yeah, I started just doing a lot of research. I think that's the crazy thing about it. Day and night, reading reports and really wanting to make sure that I understood the subject matter and I understood what I was talking about and I understood really where the opportunities were. And so what I started to see early on is like, hey, there's all this food, right? There's tons of food and it's going to waste. 40% of all the food we produce, which is like $218 billion that we spend on food we never eat. So what I was seeing being advertised so much is like, donate food. We need food. We have a canned food drive. We're working at the food banks. Like this is what it's needed. And what I started to see is like, well, we have a lot of really good food that's going to waste. Like that's the thing I started to kind of see. So the idea wasn't that we needed to produce more food or that we were going to need more food. There was so much food out here. And so what I started to see it as then was like a logistics situation. I was like, this is a logistics issue. It's like, if we have the food and instead it's going to landfill instead of the people, like how can I divert that food there? And, I started really researching like logistics technology companies. And so I saw Ubers and Postmates and I saw this shared economy space as being a way that like logistics and just movement was getting handled in a new era. And I thought, this is what I need, this is what it needs to be. I need to figure out how I can create an app when food is ready, it can get picked up, and then it can get delivered nearby. Like that's the way that Uber and Amazon, this is how they work. The drivers deliver in one area or they drive in an area and they just pick up in those areas. And so that's how I started really just doing that initial research was just critical to the business. The more you know before you get started, the better. And I felt very well prepared when I started to just draw out what I thought the app would look like. And then I went to Georgia Tech at a hackathon and basically said, hey, this is what I want to build. And some students and like local coders built me a prototype that just didn't work. It just was literally like a video prototype. And I used that for a year to try and like raise money to build the technology because I didn't have it. And it was super expensive, way more. I thought like this would be like building a website. And I was like, oh, I'm going to find someone to build this and it's going to be $15,000 maybe. And it was way more than that. And so I used that prototype for a whole year and just sold the vision.
And what was the process like for you raising capital? What was your first round?
That was terrible. Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard raising capital. It's really hard to raise capital as a woman. It's even more hard to raise capital as a Black woman. So we're talking less than 1% of all funding. So about 0.6% goes to Black women, 2% goes to women as a whole. And then we basically all split our parts up, right? And so it was extremely difficult just thinking about, hey, it's almost like saying 1 in every 100 people, make it across the bridge. go across that bridge, and you're kind of very fearful and just like, wow, do I want to do this? Is this going to work for me? And I found that those stories were actually really counterproductive. And I'm always featured in stories like that, like, Black woman founder raises money, and I don't want to have those labels, right? Why can't I just be a founder? Like, you never hear the Eastern male European founder raised, like you just never hear those kind of things. So it's like, why do we have to be labeled? Why can't I just be a founder from Atlanta, Georgia, created, or a CEO, or someone? Like, I always have to have these labels. And so, people would say like, oh, well, this fund, they're traditionally supporting, Black women founders. I'm like, great. Like, so all of us were going to these same places, and it was hard. I think it took me about 5 months, which in hindsight, people are like, oh, that's no time at all. Like, but 5 months is a very long time, because that whole time you're kind of like, I'm at a pinnacle right now. I've got some customers. I really need to bring on team. I really need to get this product finished and, built. And I needed that money. So every single day was like, are we going to be in business? Are we going to be in business? And we had one kind of enterprise level customer that was able to, through their contract, keep us rolling. So that whole time that we were waiting to raise funds, we had 1 or 2 customers that were paying us to where we were able to like live a little bit. Still ramen noodle live, but just like live. And so about 5.5 months in, we closed it, but it all happened like in 2 weeks. So no. Everyone said no. I mean, people would say things like, well, will you ever have too much food and no one to give it to? And I was like, I mean, that's what we would hope, right? Like, if that happens, then we've solved hunger. Yeah. Great thing. Like, we're so far from there, sir. Like, just so, it was, and then I had to start saying, like, I'm raising money from people that have never been hungry. People that have never experienced the problems. And I think a lot of women founders, that's why it's so hard for us. But when people do invest in us, you have those Rent the Runway stories and the Bumble stories, but men don't think like, oh, women would love an app where they get to make their first move, because they don't think like that, right? Or so I was really pitching to mostly white male men who didn't understand like hunger being a big issue and food waste being a big issue. And so my first investor was a Black male out of San Francisco. And I remember we were on a Zoom call, and he had called in, and then I was on the video chat. And then at some point he went into his office, and then he like got on video chat, because his name is Charles Hudson. So I definitely was like, cool white guy from San Francisco I'm about to be meeting with. And I saw he was Black, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm texting my team like, he was, think 5 months in, all the different investors I met with, and this is the first one that looked like me. Oh, wow. And so it was so shocking to kind of just like have that moment, but be it for him, he got it. And he was like, I'm from Detroit. I understand what you're talking about. But he's still very successful, went to Stanford, undergrad and graduate school, but just being that we had similar, authentic beginnings. It didn't matter where we ended, because we had similarities. He was able to say like, wow, I have seen hunger in Detroit, and I think this makes a lot of sense. And so when he said yes, people were like reaching out to us that had told us no. And then within 2 weeks, we raised that additional amount to put us over $1 million. But for 5 months, it never happened. So it took us about 5.5 months to get there. And so sometimes that notion of all it takes is one yes is so real, because we were at a point where it was like, if someone doesn't say yes to us, we're just done. Like, we would have never been. And so they said yes. We brought in the additional money, and, we've been working hard ever since. Yeah.
You have. And you have a gorgeous office space. Yeah. Where is it located? What part of town?
It's off the Beltline. So near like Ponce City Market, Piedmont Park kind of area.
And what did it feel like to have that physical space? Yeah, and it was so gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean,
really put your roots down.
It was such a blessing. I mean, it is something that I'm, just to think that I have like 17 employees now is really crazy for me, and I travel a lot. And sometimes like people just be in the office and they're like, hey, I'm Maya. I'm a new employee. And I'm like, oh, how like nice to meet you. It's just to think that it could ever even get this big, and to think that I only want it to get so much bigger, is what's exciting. Just, I mean, it's every time I walk into the office, I'm just so grateful. And I'm just like, thank you for this space, because I started in a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, that's where I started cooking for people. And that is hard to cook for 400 or 500 people in a 1-bedroom apartment kitchen. Like,
it's hard to cook for 4 people.
Yes, and stuff. Like, I had food everywhere. I would bring in tables in my living room. Like, you would have to walk in a path. It was a lot. So to be able to say, like, we're in an office, and it's our space and it's green and it's just, it's very authentic to, I think, who we are and the culture we're trying to build. I'm very, very grateful for that.
You're talking about gratitude. I want to switch more to the emotional and the mental part of this journey. The theme of tonight for this event is trust in your magic. And so what does that evoke in you when you think about maybe some moments when you really had to lean into trust? I'm sure fundraising was one of them,
so many before Goodr. I tell a story. Right when I was starting Goodr, I had left a 5-year relationship, and of which in that relationship I was with someone who had 2 kids that essentially they were raising. So I kind of became raising them when we lived together. It was just like almost like a family. Yeah. And so, but it wasn't a good family. It just didn't feel good. And so I was like, I remember saying to myself leading up, like, God, just, get me out of this relationship. And if I leave with nothing, I'll be happy. And I did. So be careful what you pray for, because I ended up leaving that relationship with nothing, and I went from this house and, this just more so routine family life that you will experience. But it was okay, because technically the children weren't my kids. I had raised them because that's the kind of person I am. I'm just a nurturing person. And I feel like I just, did a lot of things out of love, right? But ultimately it was with someone that never came out and fed with me, that I just didn't feel like was really supporting the dreams and the visions that I did have for myself. Would have probably been perfectly okay with me always being a housewife to kids that technically weren't mine, and there were things that it just didn't feel right. So we ended up breaking up, and it was a bad breakup, terrible. And I ended up leaving just, with some of my savings and going to this 1-bedroom apartment. And I remember my car situation just got like out of hand. I had an expensive car that was like thousands of dollars just to repair. So I was like, I'm just going to try and Uber it for a little while. And I remember when I was in that hackathon at Georgia Tech, one time I Ubered, and to get back, it was like, hackathons go all night. So this is like at 1 a.m., it was like a surge. Mm-hmm. And I remember to get home, because I lived in South Fulton at the time, it was like $80 for me to get home. And I remember the next week, I was like, I can't even go, because I literally was like budget conscious that much, because all I had was my savings. Mm-hmm. So I literally had like $10,000 that I was like, this has got to, my rent is like 8 something, like this has got to last me until, several months. And so I remember the people that were putting that hackathon on, I told them that, and they sent me like $200 via PayPal. And so there were a lot of times that I just had to not be ashamed of my struggle, and tell people like, hey, I don't have the money to get there. It cost me $80 last time to get home. And know that me being authentic and actually going through the struggle was going to help me so much more. And I think that's what it's about. Sometimes not just trusting in your magic, but also trusting in your struggle, and that you're going to get through the things that you go through, because your magic will be the thing that you kind of lean on, I think, when things are great. It's all magical and we're happy. Mm-hmm. But when things are bad, that's when I really believe that for me, it was the best time to say, Jasmine, you're going to get through this. Great things are happening. And I used to like write Post-its all over my mirror. And I would say things like, your app is going to be great. You're going to be well known for this. You're going to change lives. And I still have those today. They're in my journal, and my handwriting is terrible. So just imagine, I used to have these Post-its, lime green Post-its everywhere, and just reminding myself, even when I was sad, to still read those and still turn to those in this 1-bedroom apartment, so to now go from a 1-bedroom apartment to a house to an office to just all these things that have happened just within the last 2 years. I think that's what I think about, is just trusting that things were going to get better. Because in 2016 and 2017, it was a way different life that I was in, path that I was just on, and just not knowing if it would ever get better.
But obviously, in those moments when you didn't know, but you obviously had the faith.
Yeah,
I mean,
always had the
that's,
faith.
you
I mean,
know,
I always had the faith. I had days where I would question my faith sometimes, because I used to say, like, especially with my ex situation, like, why I'm the better person. Like, that's the bad thing to say. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm the good one, I'm the one who really is like out here. I'm the better person. And I would question, like, why are, these things happening to me, essentially. But, everything turned around. And I think, it's just, even when I think about my friend's struggle, like, everything turned around for her. Like, just, you go through things and you will get through them, especially if you just keep the faith, but also keep the work. And I think that's the thing that I always tell people. Like, I found a way to feed people when I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, wondering how I was going to pay my rent, how I was going to feed myself. I found a way to still just be like, I'm going to do this because I know these people are like depending on me. And I would take volunteer. I mean, I could feed like 3 and 4, 500 people for like $200. Like, I learned how to stretch pastas and chickens and go to farmers markets and and it would take me a long time to do it, but that kind of stuff. So, like, keeping the faith is one thing, but also doing the work. And I think that's the biggest piece, is I did the work every single day, even when I didn't know how it was going to happen. I always fed people, and, investors will say to me, like, well, why you and not your competition? And I will say, like, I understand this struggle. I am very closely connected to the people that I'm trying to help. And this just wasn't something that was developed in a venture lab. And I just didn't go to school and sit with some friends and think this would be so cool. Like, I literally felt this struggle. I saw it firsthand, and I decided to use it as a vehicle to help a lot of people. And that is why I think Goodr has been recognized and has seen the success that we've seen, is really because we always have done the work, and we still do. We have pop-up grocery stores every single weekend. Like, we're always in the community, we're always doing stuff. And I think I brought that as one of our core values, and is one of the ways that I want to lead. I want people that really want to help people first, before they want to make a lot of money, before all these other things.
You are a force and so inspirational. We are going to, before we get into the Q&A, we're going to turn it over so the tables, that you all have some time to talk to your women around you. What aha moments, what inspiration, what is coming up for you? Talk it around with your tribe, and then we'll be right back in just a few minutes.